Speaker. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate the honourable member who brought this debate. I think it's a very important debate to have brought. And he will recall, as I'm sure will the House, that over the course of the past year, I have asked a lot of questions about Yemen at appropriate times of various ministers. And one of the themes that I brought out in that is how we can ensure that our aid workers are kept safe in what is, I know he doesn't like the term proxy war, but is effectively a proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And let me start by sticking to that bit. I mean, I know that my honourable friend from Banbury has mentioned a lot about the humanitarian aid, but let me bring out what that humanitarian aid is actually achieving. And I know that a number of people have mentioned the 400 million that has been made available since 2015. I'd just like to confirm that I think we have added an additional 170 million to that for this year, the Minister is nodding, in order to cover the 2018-19 financial year, which is a great achievement. Now, I know that a number of people have mentioned the incidence of cholera, but just to mention the incidence of cholera says nothing about what we have done there. And what we have done is to fund and provide a tremendous number of vaccines, and we've also provided a whole lot of things that keep people safe, like chlorinated water, and we have helped to rehabilitate medical facilities in the country. So I think it is, I think we are all agreed that it is unacceptable that millions of vulnerable Yemenis are at risk because aid is being blocked. I think that we should all do whatever we can to help to carry that through, but not in any way diminishing the amount of humanitarian aid that is provided. Now, I want to talk about one issue about that I think has only been partially mentioned, and that is the influence of Iran. The Iranian regime is an active sponsor of international terror groups. It operates a complex network of weapons smuggling in defiance of UN Security Council resolutions. Not just one resolution, but I think 4 separate resolutions. So the question that we have to ask is, what pressure can we bring on Iran to stop funding the Houthis? And that is also a question that I have asked in previous question sessions in this House. I would have thought that a good starting point for that would have been the nuclear arms deal that we conducted with Iran. But unfortunately, that is completely silent on this important point. It is one of the great lacuna in that agreement with Iran, because it provides no mechanism to stop released funds from reaching the Houthis. It provides no mechanism for us to put pressure on Iran to stop funding the Houthis. And if you just think about it, just a fraction of the 100 billion was there as part of the sanctions that have now been released. Just a small fraction of that would triple or more the amount of funds that are reaching the Houthis. So I think that if we want to look at that in more detail, we need to look at what the government's position on Iran is. And I'm very pleased that the Prime Minister said in 2017, and I quote, that her aim is to reduce Iran's malign influence in the Middle East. And I think that is an accurate description of Iran's influence over this. And she went on to say, and I quote, "We must also work together to push back against Iran's aggressive regional actions, whether in Lebanon, Iraq, the Yemen, Syria, or the Gulf itself." And I think that that's an important list of areas where Iran is trying to establish its own arc, and why there is such antagonism from the Saudis to be able to take that and not to fight back. But can we work with the Saudis and are we having success with the Saudis? And I would say that in this particular issue, that our continuing closeness with the Saudis is having an effect. It is having an effect on what we can say to them and what we can get them to do. And the failure to look at it in this way, I think, goes to the heart of one of the things that was mentioned at the beginning of this debate, which was to miss the wider context of this terrible fight in Yemen. And what it does is to ignore one of the main players, and it makes it appear as if this is nothing more than a Saudi attack on Yemen without any possible additional influence. Of course I will.
I think he's making a very powerful speech about aid and the importance of peace and supporting the Yemeni people. In speaking about the Yemeni people, he's just raising the point about them wanting to take back control of their country. And the 25,000 Yemeni people, backed by the government on the outskirts of Hodeidah, who don't want war, but who want peace, and they want return to civic democracy with human rights, as opposed to oppression by the Houthi militia, who have no right to be in Hodeidah.
Well, I agree very much with the honourable member. My thoughts and the principles of my actions is with the people of Yemen itself. It's with those people who are not Houthi rebels. It's with those people who do not side with the Saudi regime. It's for people who want to carry on having normal lives and to go about their normal business as best they can. But I do think that if we don't stress these points, we begin to lose balance in this discussion. And I don't think that that's helpful. I don't think it's helpful to the Yemenis. It's certainly not helpful to us. And for example, I don't know whether members saw there was a BBC report of the situation in Yemen, which was probably the usual 3-4 minute report on it. Not once did it mention Iran in that report. Not once did it mention Iran as the financial backers of the Houthis. It was entirely a Houthi versus Saudi Arabia conflict. Now, we've heard a lot about resolving the problem, and it was, I think, an illustrative example of how the Houthis either were misinformed or simply did not take seriously the need to be in Geneva to participate in these talks. I agree that that is probably not a disaster, but I think that it is illustrative of the difficulties that we have to overcome in order to ensure that, that what we can achieve there is a real taking forward of this peace initiative, because I agree with those that have said this point before, that this battle is not going to be won on the military field, it's going to be won by negotiations.